Let's talk about some of the stuff that nobody understands. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. uh, I love it when I get really ignorant comments. And ignorance is okay as long as one is actually gainfully seeking the answers to things, but of course most people are never doing that. The ignorant question that I actually get from people try to make a differentiation between physics and metaphysics. Obviously one is phenomenal and the other one is noumena. It's interesting that people think that there's a distinction between physics and metaphysics. It's like some fool who would think that the head of a coin is something wholly different from the tail of the coin. I mean, ultimately, it's the exact same coin. Here's a question for you. It's really hard to simplify something that's so fundamentally simple but not simplex when it comes to magnetism and metaphysics, because the two are irrevocably intertwined. I mean, the notion that there's physics here and there's metaphysics over here is absolutely asinine. What's the shortest distance between 2 points? When we talk about magnetism, we know we have the hyperboloid. We have the torus, we have the hyperboloid, the mirror images of space and counter space. The shortest distance between New York and Moscow, for example, on the curved surface of the Earth, for example, and I don't want any flat earthers to interject their comments in on this. The shortest distance is not a straight line, it's actually a curvilinear. When we talk about, or when I talk about in my book, a reciprocating precessional hyperboloid, and of course this is a known entity. I mean, the only way that MRI machines, for example, can work is to know the actual gyromagnetic precession of the magnetic pulse that the MRI responds to at X number of megahertz or gigahertz. This follows a ratio of 1 to phi in extrapolation, but not to get too complex, which is really, really easy to do. Try to keep things really simple. People don't understand Mother Nature's line. Now, this is the line of a human being. We start from point A and we go to point B here. Mother Nature, in no form which we designate as space and time, which have no definition outside magnitude and measure. Time nor space have any properties. Of course, Nikola Tesla said this. The ancient Greek Platonists say this. Time nor space are entities. Of course, we as human beings, as phenomenal entities, swim within space and time. So it is completely absurd and abstract in the extreme for a human being to conceive that time and space have absolutely no autonomous existence. They are measures of magnitude and passages of magnitude. The shortest distance between 2 points is, of course, curvilinear. Now, to extrapolate that out and to discuss Mother Nature's line is like this, but that's two-dimensional thinking. Obviously, the one thing that defines space is, of course, magnetism. Magnetism is the loss of inertia, is the loss of potential. Just like an explosion, for example, creates a cloud, creates a voluminous, spherical, or toroidal, it doesn't matter, it creates a voluminous cloud, correct? The loss of that energy released in heat and light and radiation creates a spherical or toroidal cloud, correct? The only thing that defines space and time is magnetism. Irreducibly so, if we're to extrapolate that out retroductively, we understand that metaphysics and physics are one and the same thing. That which defines physics is only the study of things that are physical, but what about the fundamental principle of which physics is given its very definition, which of course would be magnetism? If we're studying physical things, things are only physical, i.e., create space and time and take up space and time and are measured in space and time by value and quantity, which we know as magnetism, which is the loss of inertia. Then we're to extrapolate out retroductively the fact that Mother Nature's line is not simply like this. This is human being line, okay? Point A, point B. Mother Nature's line, first step, is this. Okay, this is Mother Nature's line. A magnet doesn't have poles. I explain this quite succinctly in the 4th edition of my book. I explain it somewhat so in the 3rd edition of the book. A magnet does not have poles. It has the inverse of counter space. It is amazing, too, by the way, that something so simple, the fundamental principle of the entire universe, i.e. magnetism, is so incredibly complex for the average human being to comprehend. That either A, shows that human beings are extremely unevolved, or B, that their minds are simply directed at mundane bullshit like, bills and sex and money and, cars and houses. It's probably a combination of both, obviously so. But we're to extrapolate out in 3 dimensions, since the torus, which defines phenomena, which creates space and time, does not occupy space and time, but actually creates space and time, because space and time and magnetism are one and the same thing. The posterior effect of the loss of that inertia is the creation of volume. Volume is space. Space, however, itself has no properties. So it will extrapolate in the 2nd degree along 3 dimensions. Mother Nature's line is not simply like this, but is like this. Okay? Not simply like this, but like this. Then, knowing that we have the torus, which defines magnetism, which defines the loss of inertia, what is the lowest pressure mediation to extrapolate out from these 2 points to the reciprocal, the total loss of that loss of inertia, i.e. the total pressure release of that loss of inertia to the other side is, of course, an incorrect word, but if you want to say to the other pole, that is also an incorrect term. The shortest distance is not straight, it is curvilinear. The spirograph-like pattern that you actually see in the ferrocell, in which, of course, I discovered this long before I even knew that the ferrocell existed, is the torus, but the torus does not follow a straight. If you were to take a look at one pole, like I said, a magnet doesn't have one pole, the lines do not come out in straight perpendicular lines to the other side. They actually come out in curvilinear fashion, which creates this hypertrochoid pattern, or you want to say a spirograph pattern. The shortest distance of pressure mediation between those two is curvilinear along the voluminous torus, which defines magnetism itself. But this 3-dimensionality is only defined by phenomena, so it is, unfortunately, because I never would have thought that such nonsense would actually be the true definition of the cosmos, of the universe, the holographic paradigm is, alas, unfortunately true. Metaphysics and magnetism. People don't even realize that they want to understand magnetism, and they know that I create videos on metaphysics, but there's no differentiation from the perspective of Mother Nature and fundamental reality between magnetism, i.e. physics. Of course, magnetism is strictly field theory, and fields are not physical, so obviously we need to define that, as I mentioned in probably 100 different videos. There's no differentiation between physics and metaphysics. They're both one and the same thing. Talk about the head side of a coin versus the tail side of a coin. It's ultimately all the damn coin. There's no such thing as physics versus metaphysics. They're all one and the same thing. One deals with noumena, the other one deals with phenomena. Physics has never answered the fundamental principles or questions of the universe, like what is a field? The 4 Maxwellian field equations never define a field. They only define it insofar as effect over a given period of time given a vector. But that's not the definition of a field. That's the definition of a field's effect over a period of time in a certain vector. No branch of current science or physics has ever defined a field. Everything is fields, and fields have no physicality. Fields are not particles. However, modern physics and quantum mechanics would like to tell you, and they say in those uncertain terms, they actually created unicorn particles to actually extract. The term that they use are virtual photons, or virtual particles. They're so wrapped up in atomistic thinking, they think everything must be mediated out through bumping particles. That's why I call it the cult of bumping particles, which is exactly what it is, a cult of bumping particles. If everything is fields and fields are not particles, then science is at a standstill, and it has absolutely no way, since we're talking about noumena, not phenomena, but noumena, as the fundamental substrate or foundation of all things which are physical by their very nature. Particle colliders and interactions between subatomic particles are never going to actually give you a definition of the nature of fundamental reality. Because even underneath that, we're talking about fields. We're talking about fundamentally dielectricity and magnetism. Electricity is phi times psi equals Q in Planck of electrification. Electricity is dielectricity and magnetism. Gravity is not an autonomous field modality. It is merely dielectric acceleration. So there's not an autonomous field modality that we understand as gravity. So where are we left? We're left fundamentally with a wholly incomplete picture of the nature of reality as given to us by modern science and quantum mechanics and the idiots that have actually sprung up after Einstein and Niels Bohr and the rest of them, because these people are all fundamentally one thing and one thing only. They're atomists. They use math to try to explain the universe, but Mother Nature does not use math. Everything is pressure mediation, force and motion, inertia and acceleration. Everything is capacitance, resistance, permeability, and permittivity. Mother Nature does not work off of math. She's a hippie chick with hairy armpits and dirty feet, if you want a really perfect analogy. Mother Nature doesn't have a calculator and she doesn't use math. Everything is pressure mediation. The loss of that inertia or pure potential is defined as magnetism. The entire universe in volume, all phenomena, is fundamentally the loss of that pure potential as defined in magnetism. The only thing that actually defines a magnet is the fact that field coherency is coet. Coherent radiation versus incoherent radiation. You know the difference between a light bulb and a laser? Coherence. Field coherency. A magnet has no quantity. Its qualitative field coherency is that geomagnetic precession is identical or nearly identical throughout the entire atomic structure of that particular mass. If we understand what defines the torus as the loss of inertia and the hyperboloid, which defines increasing potential, inertia, and acceleration, we have the mirror image of the entire universe, space and counterspace, force and motion, inertia and acceleration. It's that simple, but human beings can't even wrap their mind around it. Physics and metaphysics are one thing. They're not two different things. The ancient Greeks understood this, and the ancient Indians understood that, but modern human beings are too goddamn stupid. They just don't understand. They think that, well, that's the realm of, spirituality. And religion is secularized metaphysics. Not interested in a religion. Metaphysics and physics are one and the same thing. Underneath the substrate, underneath the foundation of all things physical, we must ultimately arrive at fields and inertia and acceleration and dielectricity. Fundamentally pure potential, or inertia, or the ether. It doesn't matter what you call it. Mother Nature doesn't give a shit what stupid human beings call it. It's pure potential. It's irrelevant what definition we give it. It's pure potential. It's pure inertia. Not the current notion of inertia, but the absolute original denotation of the term inertia. Today, inertia means something different. Talk about the original denotation of inertia, or pure potential. Sheer actuality, sheer potential, sheer unmanifest potential. We're confused. We actually think as potential energy release, but that is impotency. Pure potency is unmanifest. Human beings always have everything upside down and backwards. We think of things as volume as potential. We think of energy released as potential. That's actually upside down. That's actually impotency. The loss of inertia, the loss of potential, as demonstrated in magnetism, force and motion, volume and power, is always, of course, denotatively from the perspective of pure logic and monistic metaphysics and simplex wisdom, it's impotency. We can't actually measure counter space and pure inertia, but we can force and motion and force and volume, mass and movement and heat and friction. We can measure all of those things, so we think that's actually pure energy and potential, but we have everything upside down and backwards. But metaphysics and field theory, people wonder, like, why do you make videos on field theory and then videos on metaphysics? And I tell these people, you don't even understand. They're both one and the exact same damn thing. What makes you think that the two are, they're Siamese twins inseparable? You can't separate out physics from metaphysics. One defines the other, but not inversely. So physics does not define metaphysics. Metaphysics always defines physics. It's a one-way road. It says one way on that stop sign. metaphysics defines physics, but never the inverse. We can retroductively assume and conclude things about metaphysics from what we physically observe and the understanding of phenomena. But human beings don't have that sort of mentality anymore. Those sort of minds died with Proclus, Numenius, Albanus, Plotinus, Damasius, Syrianus. Died in ancient India and ancient Greece thousands of years ago. Human beings don't have minds like that anymore. You got the best modern Greek scholars on earth that can't make heads or tails of many of their works of Plato and Plotinus. All 5 translations of Plotinus are absolute dog crap. Nobody knows what the hell Plotinus is saying because they don't have the mentality to understand fundamental metaphysics. Their minds are too foobarred on ice cream and, hot chicks and fast cars. Don't have the minds to understand stuff like that. Modern human beings don't anyway. Anyway, thanks for watching. That was my musings on metaphysics and physics because the two are not two things. They're one thing and one thing only. Thanks for watching and bye. Bum, ba-dum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, ba-dum, bum.